want to discuss the big picture and discuss some ideas on achieving freedom in the digital age. When we're talking about the big picture, we have to have a clear vision of where we're going and what the landscape ahead of us looks like in order to properly navigate our way to peace and prosperity. It does you no good to avoid the potholes in front of you if the road you're on is leading you over a cliff, right? So, the big picture is important, and sometimes we lose sight of it as we get mired in our own personal battles, daily struggles, and all the distractions that life brings us. The Lighthouse Law Club was created to help give people a better opportunity to completely change the paradigms which govern their lives. In other words, to break free from the bondage of the control mechanisms that keep us living in a box with extreme limitations and heavy burdens which keep us down and limit our ability to live in the freedom and prosperity which God had intended for us. Now, that's a pretty big order to fill, right? So how do we do that? In short, we do that by enhancing your capacity to, first of all, understand the problems created by the slave masters, and then, secondly, offering some of the best available knowledge and wisdom to apply it properly, which we can derive from the actual experience of others who have already been there and done that. So today I want to speak about the big picture. I'd like to outline what's happening, which is changing our lives, and how that will either destroy us or propel us forward on a wave of freedom and prosperity, depending on how you handle it. So, are we ready? Let's get into it. All right. We're currently living in an age of disruption. You've probably heard that term before. What are societal disruptors? Well, we all know that when the radio first came out in the 20th century, that completely changed how society sent and received information and communications. All right, the next disruptor was television. I can remember as a little tyke, everyone had black and white TVs. And then, when some people, only a few, were able to brag about the fact that they had a color television, wow, that was really revolutionary. A color TV. Look at that, Mom. I remember those days. The next disruptors, well, we can go right down the list. Computers completely changed the way we do things with the internet. And that was as recent as the 90s. That was just a few years ago. Society completely changed with computers and the internet. All right, then came cell phones. I remember in the early 2000s, I had a Motorola Razr, with that flip top. It was just like out of Star Trek, Captain Kirk pulling out his communicator and talking to Spock back up on the bridge. That was pretty cool, right? Well, that was just for making telephone calls and texts. Now, we're at the point where cell phones are basically handheld computers. And globalization has already changed the world completely. I remember in the 70s, my first trip abroad, went to France for a while. And at that time, before computers, before the internet, before cell phones, before any of this, when you went to another country, that was really a big deal. You were really, really far away. We didn't have the communications. You were on the other side of the world in a different culture with a different language, different currency. Everything was different. That was a big deal. Now, you travel And it's hard to tell where you're at because everything is so standardized. Airports. You can walk down to the Plaza Mayor in Madrid and you see Starbucks and Burger King and a lot of the same restaurants you're used to back home. Everything is being standardized. All right, so things are changing rapidly and drastically. The business world today is changing faster than we realize. We are seeing 100-year-old companies disappearing. Yet at the same time, every month we hear of a new self-made billionaire in his 20s or 30s. Now, what's with that? They've got the same 24 hours in the day that you or I do. What makes them different? I'll tell you what it is. They're leveraging their knowledge into the digital age. I know of one company alone which is on the leading edge of a new disruption technology. In fact, several new disruption technologies. And this company has created over 2,000 millionaires in its very first year and a half to 2 years of its existence. 2,000 millionaires of people that were tapped into that company when they first came out. And that wasn't just a flash in the pan from the starting gate. Those numbers are increasing. They're achieving critical mass. I happen to be involved with that company. And the success that I've achieved in that company in a very short time, in that industry, in the digital world, in a short time, makes it easy for me to see how those millionaires are being created. So everything is going digital. Music, videos, live streaming, event feeds, communications, alarm clocks, kitchen appliances, machines, banking and finance, biometric ID scanners, and the list just goes on, right? The key question is, how is this mega trend going to affect you? Or has it already affected you? And this means much more than just having the latest gadget to play with, right? There's much more than that involved. It's very likely to affect your job, your career, your income, finances, and well, let's face it, your entire future. So what's changing and how is it changing? I think it's safe to say that business as usual, the way we've always done it and the way we've always known it, is dead. Check this out. In this new digital age, it's predicted that half of all office jobs globally will disappear in the next 10 years. Do you work in an office? Hello? Pay attention. You know about 3D printing, right? 3D printing will wipe out 300 million manufacturing jobs in the next few years. Do you work for a manufacturer? Hello? Pay attention. We're hearing more and more about self-driving cars and trucks coming to the forefront. Horrible idea, but without getting into that, that's going to get rid of millions more jobs. Today, there are 18-wheeler trucks in Germany with no drivers. Can you imagine that? What are those truck drivers doing that used to drive those trucks? Now, listen to this. Half of the jobs that we know in the U.S. that exist today will disappear. Did you hear me? Let me repeat that. Half of the jobs that we know in the U.S. that exist today will disappear. Think about it. That means that you have a 50% chance of losing your job, your career, and your future because of this unstoppable trend. It's no laughing matter, is it? Are you prepared for this? It's like putting your entire future on red on the roulette wheel. It's 50-50. Yeah, you could win, maybe keep your job. You might lose. Now I'll tell you what, if you're a bettor, if you're a statistician, those are not good odds. So, the Lighthouse Law Club is trying to help its members prepare and be properly positioned to benefit from this wave instead of being a victim. Our society is going through a transition just like we did when we moved from an agricultural farming-based economy to an industrial economy 100 years ago. But today, only 6% of the population feeds the rest. 94% is involved in other productive activities. Here's an interesting fact for you. Of the original Fortune 500 companies, do you know how many are left? Only 57 of the original Fortune 500 companies are still in existence today. What does that mean? I'll tell you one thing that it means, and one thing that this trend means is that physical items are disappearing. Think about it. 30 years ago, your desk had items on it like a big bulky telephone, a pencil holder, a Rolodex, a calculator, a calendar, a notepad, a radio, a newspaper, and next to your desk was a big, bulky filing cabinet. Today, all of these items have been replaced by an app. Look at your phone. What do you have on there? All the items you used to have on your desk are now contained in your handheld phone, which happens to fit nicely in your shirt pocket. We are living in a post-physical world, folks, and this has huge consequences. And if we don't recognize that, we will be victimized. On the other hand, it offers tremendous opportunities. But things are being replaced by an app. Did you know that 3D printing can also produce meat? There's no original animal that needs to be raised and butchered. Back to Star Trek again with the food replicators, right? They're using 3D printing for cosmetic surgery to make body parts, prosthetic hands. Saw an article, a young kid, 5-6 years old, has a prosthetic hand to replace one he didn't have. He can now operate fully functional with a fully functional hand. They're creating noses to replace a nose in cosmetic surgery with 3D printing. They're building buildings. Think about that. Creating buildings with 3D printing. No skilled labor is required. No architects are required. No materials really are required in the traditional sense. No unskilled labor is required. None of the things that were involved in building a home previously are required. All you need is a computer program and a 3D printer. So think about what that does to the industries which produce those items. Raw materials extraction, lumber and timber industry, mining, petroleum for plastics, plastic injection molding companies, production, transport, warehousing, distribution, sales chains. Think about it. How is that going to shake up our world substantially. Today's Tesla factory operates and there's almost no people working in it. It's all robots. And then you see articles about unskilled workers in fast food who are demanding $15 an hour. Oh yeah? Guess what? Robots and technology can now take your order. You pay digitally with your Apple phone and wait for your food to be delivered to your designated table by a mechanical robot. These are already in existence and fully operational in Japan and elsewhere. Think about it. We've got what? Roughly 3 billion people on the planet. Statistics indicate that there are roughly 9 billion devices which are connected by an app. So that means people have multiple devices and they're all using apps. One click, you can connect with, let's say, up to 6 million people. All right? The world's biggest hotel room reservation company, hotel company, owns no hotels. Digital booking companies like Expedia are taking over the market. The biggest taxi company owns no taxis. You know about Uber. The biggest retailers, Alibaba and Amazon, own no stores. And here's one for you. You've heard of the Pokemon Go game, right? It's an app. I saw where in a recent 90-day period, it grossed $470 million in 90 days. An app. So things are changing so fast that unless you pay attention and make your plans, you could lose your career and your future and be left behind. All right, so there's 3 things to focus on. Do a little bit of research. Keep your eye on these things. 1, in the digital age, keep an eye on apps, communications, networks, finance, currencies. Okay? These are all things that help me be able to work from any Wi-Fi enabled hammock in the world. You may have heard me talk about that in other presentations. It's a lifestyle I cherish, and I'll go down fighting for it, okay? But keep an eye on these things. Apps, communications, networks, finances, and currency, and how they're changing in the digital age. That's number 1. Number 2, do some research and look into 3D printing. Just do a search on the net. Read some articles about it. Find out what's going on in that industry and what 3D printing is doing. All right. The third area to look at, do a little research, keep your eye on the sharing economy. You've probably seen articles on some cities, municipalities, how they are setting up a community bicycle program. People don't need to buy a bike. The city stations bikes all over the city. And wherever you are, you can just pick one up, ride it to your next destination, leave it at the designated drop-off point, and someone else can come and use it when you're done. So you don't need to buy a bike. The city buys a bunch of them, and the people in the city just share the bikes. The same thing is being done with cars. Cars are getting very expensive. To get a nice car, you already need $25,000, $30,000. And with the way the economy's going, a lot of people just can't justify that, especially if they live in a metropolitan city where you've got parking, congestion, all the headaches that go with it, the cost of insurance, traffic tickets. It's a headache. People are sharing cars. In fact, GM now is allocating a large percentage of their production for cars that are not going to be for sale per se, but will be shared. And think about it. Instead of GM selling a car one time for $25,000, What if they could get a group of 10 people together to each pay $5,000 to share that car? It's a good deal for the people. They don't, they save $20,000 and get to use the same car. Good deal for GM. Instead of making $25,000, they make $50,000 for that one car. Not a bad deal. It makes perfect sense. The sharing economy is estimated to be a $29 billion opportunity. All right, so there are new ways of conducting commerce and doing business that never existed before. These are some of the biggest trends. It's predicted that by 2030, for example, 25% of all car miles logged will be by Uber. And another large percentage of miles logged will be by cars that are shared and not individually owned. Another example, you can now rent out your home or just a room in your home to Airbnb. We know that time sharing has been quite common and prevalent, and it's old hat in the jet airplane industry, private jets, and condos, time sharing, and that type of thing. So the concept has been around for a long time, but it's now blossoming into all kinds of industries and applications. And the concept is exploding. All right, so we're showing members in the Lighthouse Law Club ways of connecting to these trends and growing their own marketplace. Okay? Here's another good example. There's a company, was a startup called Rent a Runway. And we're not talking about airplanes and airports. We're talking about fashion runways. Two girls set up this company, Rent a Runway, to rent high fashion dresses that might cost thousands of dollars. A customer can wear this smashing high fashion dress one time to one party, be the hit of the party, pay only a fraction of what the dress would cost, which if you know women, they won't wear a dress more than once or twice anyway. She rents it, gives it back. Now, instead of having to buy something like that, she can afford for the next high society party to wear a completely different high fashion dress for special events, be a smash hit on the high society fashion chat each and every time. Great concept. These girls are hugely successful. All right, so these are just a few examples of how entrepreneurs are tapping into these emerging trends. Now, should be aware that Lighthouse Law Club is all about freedom, right? And there's much more involved in freedom than just understanding law, learning to defend and protect your rights, property, and prosperity. I always say, what good is freedom if you're too broke to enjoy it, right? There's got to be a balance here. We put a heavy focus on learning how to defend yourself legally and otherwise. But more than that, freedom really requires a few other things. Mobility is one. If you don't have mobility in this world, you're stuck somewhere. Pardon my French, but you're screwed. You've got to have escape routes, landing pads, alternate refuges. Look at what's happening just now in early October, Hurricane Matthew, plowing through Haiti, the Bahamas, looking for landfall all up the entire East Coast. Let's say, God forbid, that hits landfall and just completely destroys the area where you live. Your company no longer exists. There's no more office to go to. Or even if there is, the local economy is ruined. So nobody's going to come to your restaurant anymore. At least not for a long time. You get the idea. You've got to have mobility. You've got to have escape routes planned. You've got to have landing pads set up, ready to go, or at least planned and prepared for in the event of any kind of disaster. All right? You've got to have diversified resources at your disposal. Okay? What if all of a sudden martial law is declared, some financial banking holiday catastrophe occurs, and all of a sudden cash is no longer accepted? What do you have to barter with? Do you have a sufficient gold and silver storage stashed away? Maybe even a few bushels of corn? Believe me, that could be extremely valuable under the right circumstances. Okay? You've got to have diversified resources at your disposal. Diversified and extra resources. Okay? You've got to have self-sustaining revenue and cash flow. You cannot be dependent for your life, survival, and livelihood on an employer. You cannot be dependent on a single industry, a single currency, a single government, a single market. Look at all the threats that are swirling around us today. At any given moment, any one of those things could be completely disrupted, and you're screwed. You've got to get rid of that dependency. All right? And we live in a global world now. You've got to have global access. Be ready to travel, be able to travel for the reasons that I'm talking about. Okay, so the Lighthouse Law Club provides our members with the knowledge and the opportunities to do all of these things. Leadership is provided by people already involved and successful in accomplishing these very goals and highly desirable lifestyles. They've done it. They've laid the path. They want to show you how simple it can be. It's not complicated. You don't have to be rich. This is something you can do too. And I know that, and I can say that with confidence for a fact because I've done it. And it doesn't require any special magic. It doesn't require huge amounts of money. But you got to have some. You just have to make up your mind and have the discipline to do what's required. No special skills or experience are required. Okay? Now, it does help quite a bit to have some guidance, some ideas, some intellectual resources at your disposal to provide you with as many shortcuts as possible, lay out the roadmap, show you what works, what's good, what's not, and that's what the Lighthouse Law Club is all about. In this digital age, there has never been more opportunity to live your dream. Now is the time. If not now, when? When would be the best time to change your life, to accomplish your dreams, and to change the direction so that you're headed for the right destination? Now or later? Only you can answer that question. All right? When will be a better time to turn things around in your life and really achieve some true freedom? So, in today's world, back to the digital age, there's more data being shared than ever before. There's more connectivity than ever before. And because of this, there's more opportunity than ever before if you can tap into this trend. And I'm trying to get you to see how to make this connection about tapping into this trend to achieve your dreams and the freedom that you desire and that you deserve. Okay? We're trying to make this connection. Now, we've already found several market niches which are on the leading edge of these transformational societal changes. And they are absolutely so huge, it's hard to measure. We're showing our members how to position themselves to be benefactors, beneficiaries, and not victims of these changes. You have a choice. You can be a victim or you can benefit. So, regarding the societal interruptions and paradigm shifts, this is exactly why I and many of our members are involved in banking and finance, payment systems, and cryptocurrencies. The paradigms are shifting in these industries. We're also involved in being able to build your own app for your business. How would you like to have an app for your business, or be able to offer other businesses their own app to build their own followers, to tap into those 6 million readers with the click of a button? Healthcare is another industry. You know how huge the healthcare industry is. I shouldn't have to tell you. It's absolutely monstrous. Trillions of dollars in the healthcare industry worldwide. Telemedicine is a disruptor in the traditional way of delivering healthcare. We're getting involved in telemedicine and related paradigm changes in the healthcare industry. How would you like to have your piece of the multi-trillion-dollar healthcare industry? Internet security, VPNs, virtual private networks, cloud storage with military-grade encryption. Everyone's connected. Everyone uses the internet. Everyone knows how the internet is surveilled and data is captured. Internet security has never been a hotter topic. We're also looking at a program which invests in cryptocurrencies on the various exchanges, uses an arbitrage type of trading system to find discrepancies in the prices, and this program pays 3% daily. You know how compounding works, right? Do a little calculation. Find a compound calculator on the internet and just see what 3% daily does over 2-3 months. Okay? So these are some of the things that we're getting into, and we're extremely excited. We're already achieving success, and we'd like to show you how you can benefit the same way. Our members are learning how to achieve potentially huge profits in these cutting-edge digital industries, which are, again, only just starting to blossom. We're learning how to capture our piece of these huge markets. Now, do this, and all of a sudden, you're able to do the other things that we talked about earlier. Talking about having escape routes and landing pad and diversified resources and some economic independence, mobility, able to do things, move around, not being stuck in one place. That's why it's important to tap into these opportunities to increase your freedom quotient in the other areas. Again, freedom means very little if you're broke. All right? So I think we can all understand that. So let's talk about some things that you can do to change your life today. All right? You've heard this before, that if you want something you've never had, you must do something you've never done. You've got to step out of your comfort zone. That's the first step to changing your world, is to be prepared to step out of your comfort zone. You know, it's so easy to say, oh, I'm happy with what I'm doing, it's okay, or this is paying the bills, I'm getting by all right. Hey, mister, you're not paying attention. Wake up. Listen to what I'm telling you. Let me tell you, life is not about paying the bills. Here are some questions to make a note of, right? Ask yourself these questions and give yourself an honest answer, okay? You ready? Here's the first question. Are you building a better future and advancing in your life? Or are you running on a treadmill and getting nowhere? Simple question. Should be easy to answer. Are you really advancing in your life to accomplishing your goals? Question number 2. How are you protecting your family? You say, well, what do you mean? Protecting from what? Protecting from economic upheaval. What would you do if there were a financial disaster? Your employer went out of business. Your business wasn't able to make it. What would you do How are you protecting against political turmoil? If you're paying attention to the news around the world and nationally, I shouldn't have to explain that. The risks of political turmoil are very great at this point in time in history, and they've never been greater. George Soros and his team trying to create riots, to force martial law, UN police being invited in, UN observers stepping in the greatest numbers in history to, quote, observe, unquote, the vote in November? I don't think so. All right, how are you protecting your family against these economic upheavals, political turmoil, and just natural disasters? Again, look at Hurricane Matthew going up the entire eastern coast. I pray for those people that hurricane will turn away and leave these fine people in good condition. But we know the natural disasters are increasing in frequency around the world. What if you were a family who had lived for generations in the same area, for generations in northern Japan, and everything had always been the same, aside from World War II, but for generations the family household had always been relatively safe and secure, and nothing really ever happened up there in northern Japan. Until what? Fukushima. Your entire life was turned upside down. These things are happening all around the world. Just turn on the news, you can see it for yourself. I don't need to tell you. All right? This world is changing. You've got to be ready. So, 3, how are you securing your home, finances, income, and resources? Do you have any resources you can fall back on in the case of an emergency? Are you debt-free? Are you living in a home that you own? Or are you renting it from the bank? Okay? If you are, you're not secure. You've got to be debt-free to have any level of security in an economic upheaval. All right, next. How are you helping others? Are you contributing to the needs of your community, the needy, unfortunate veterans, homeless, abandoned kids, abused pets? How are you contributing? Are you contributing to your church in any meaningful way? Are you making a big dent? I mean, are you really doing something to make a difference in someone's life? I hope so. Or, if you're like a lot of people, you're probably just making a negligible contribution and just justifying it somehow. You throw, $10 in the collection basket at church and say, well, that's about all I can do this week, and I hope it does some good. And, it's... you really can't point your finger to any lives that you're changing with that. Okay? And really, there is no greater joy in life than to be able to contribute to somebody else and make their life a lot better. You know the old saying, you can be much happier giving than receiving. And I know that. I know that from my own experience. And I know from most of my life, I wasn't able to give jack squat. And that's not a good feeling. I remember the feeling one time I had. It was one Christmas, and I was trying to get presents for my nephews who were just young boys, very young boys, and I wanted so bad to get them a really great Christmas gift. And I couldn't. I had no money. I was flat busted. And that was the most horrible feeling. It brings tears to my eyes now just talking about it. So not being able to help others is a real deficit in our lives. All right, we got to change that if we're not in a position to do that. Okay? So these are questions you have to ask yourself, and you need to come up with some answers, honest answers. You know, many of us are just getting by. Some of us wish we were just getting by, even in worse condition. And you know, that's not what life is about. God gave you the heart, the soul, the intelligence to do better. Jesus told you you should do things greater than he had done. The difference between successful people and the self-described victims, oh, I can't because, the difference is what you do with the blessings that you're given. All right? You probably should know the story about the talents. What the workers in the field did with the talents they were given. We have to be smart about it. All right? We have to be smart about what we have and the choices that we make. All right? Most people put limits on their life. They're responsible for their own failures because they don't think in a way that's productive. They don't think about possibilities. They don't think about solving problems. All they think about are the obstacles that they see in front of them, and they quit right then and there because of it. You have no limits. You can be as successful as you choose to be. But that's the key word, choose. It's up to you to change those limits, conquer your fears, change your ways of thinking. Everyone thinks and talks about changing the world, but nobody thinks about changing themselves. All right? Here's something you can do. Start each day saying two things. One, tomorrow can be a better day than today. And two, I have the power to make it so. I'm going to do whatever I can today, and I'm going to make tomorrow even better. I'm going to push the limits. I'm going to lift the barriers. I'm going to destroy the obstacles. And I'm going to do things I've never done before. Each of us has that power. All right? Let me tell you about power. Would you like to know a secret which will allow you to do what appears to be impossible? Would you like to know how to accomplish things that are entirely outside your scope of capability? Let me give you a personal testimonial, all right? Not too long ago, a few years ago, I fell in love with a gorgeous mountaintop property. It was on the edge of a natural forest preserve. It was looking down on the panoramic views of the Panama City skyline. Far below and beyond the skyline was the Pacific Ocean. I had visions for this property. I had visions of a world-class, eco-friendly residential development with an alternative health spa resort where people could come from around the world to get the best in alternative health treatments and rejuvenate in a pristine, gorgeous, tropical cloud forest environment with electrically charged air, all within 30 minutes of all the conveniences and services of the city and airport. There was only one problem. The property cost $500,000, and I only had $50,000. You could look at it as a small problem. You could look at it as a pretty big problem. So here's what I did. I got the seller to give me a contract and give me 90 days to find the rest of the money. And I made a $50,000 bet. I took all the money I had. This was all I had to my name, 50 grand. I put it down on the contract. This was a bet that I had no business making. I didn't have the balance, and honestly, I had no idea where I would get it. But I made that bet with faith, knowing that if I worked hard enough and fast enough and with the right heart and did my part, if I had enough faith to step out of the boat and onto the water, that God would do the rest. Let me tell you what happened. I came up with plans, strategies, a business plan, executive summary, all the things that you need to try and raise money, right? I started knocking on doors, talking to people, politicians, investors, real estate groups, everybody I could find, people I never knew before, asking everyone I knew for referrals, getting into places and seeing people I had never known before. And the bottom line was I really was getting almost nowhere. There was plenty of interest. It was a beautiful project. People were impressed with the plans and the location and the photos and the tours and everything else, but there were, no commitments. So now the deadline came up, the 90 days came up, and guess what happened? I didn't have the money. I did come up with some of it. And so what did I do? Back off with fear and say, well, I don't have the rest, I'm just going to have to lose the 50? No, I didn't do that. I doubled down on my bet. I told the seller, hey, look, I did come up with some extra money. Here, let me give you this extra $150,000 that I have been able to raise. Now my bet had increased from $50,000 to $200,000. And if I failed in this bet, I would lose $200,000. And this is where the hand of God and the Holy Spirit came into play. He worked on the spirit of the seller. The seller cooperated with me to the point of allowing me more time. In fact, I think there were at least 3 different deadlines that came and went without performance on my part. 3 deadlines I missed. And a long story short, with the help of the Holy Spirit, moving on the part of the seller and knowing that I was doing my part, doing everything that I could, knocking on all the doors that I could, the Holy Spirit was moving things for me and in my favor. In the end, I was successful. I acquired the property. I made good on my bet, which any sane business person in the secular world would say I was absolutely stupid to do what I did. And, looking at the Wharton School of Business parameters and teachings, it probably was stupid. But I don't operate on those parameters. I deal in the realm of the impossible. And now you know how and why. I made the bet and I succeeded. So what was the key? Well, there was 2 keys. One, I knew I was biting off more than I could chew. And I knew I would need help from above. I asked for it. I expected it. I had faith that it would happen. It wasn't easy. It was extremely stressful. I lost a lot of sleep many nights thinking about what if. Some people call this creating your own reality. I call it faith. Simple as that. All right, so that was key number 1, having faith. The second key was that I didn't just sit back on my rear end expecting a miracle to drop in my lap, all gift wrapped like a drive-through Happy Meal. I did my part, and I busted my rear doing things I had never done before. I had moved out of my comfort zone, and I was moving as if there was no tomorrow. So I did my part, God did the rest. You want success? You want a change in your life? You want a new direction to experience blessings like never before? Remember my experience. That's your key. So, we need to look at problems as opportunities in disguise. You've probably heard that before. It's not a new concept. Solve your problem, and you can help others solve the same problem. If you can figure out how to make something work to solve a problem, guess what? You can use that to create your own business. Create your own business opportunity based on your knowledge, your experience, your success. All right? I did that very same thing many years ago. I took a $10 do-it-yourself credit repair forms kit from the office supply store. I added some knowledge that I had gained elsewhere in doing credit repair. Through some experience I had in there with it, juiced it up with some other benefits to make a nice little benefits package, and I started my own credit repair and financial services business. I didn't get rich, but I did well enough to take care of myself for a couple years. Starting with what? A $10 do-it-yourself forms kit and a little creativity. All right? So look at every problem as an opportunity. All right? There's nothing in your way that is so big that you cannot overcome it. All right? Now, to increase your odds of achieving success, you must commit to lifelong learning. Read, learn, grow. Understand how the landscape is changing around you. Do your research. Keep your eyes open. Keep your ear to the ground. Know what's going on. We've got members who come in and then they leave in a month or two. I'm like, what? You cannot possibly digest all the information we have available in the Lighthouse Law Club if you took 3 years to do it. It often takes 3 to 6 months just to formulate a complete plan after studying all the options, and then you need to learn how to execute it. Changing your life doesn't happen overnight. People need to have the big picture in mind, have a long-term vision, which you can accomplish with a series of short-term goals and completing the intermediary steps along the way. People who join the Lighthouse Law Club need to have that personal self-commitment to establish a lifelong plan and then do what it takes to accomplish that. And you're not going to do that in a few short months. If that's what you're looking for, forget about it. You don't belong here. If you're going to be successful, you need staying power and you need a long-term commitment to success. How many people join a program and are actually engaged? I mean, really engaged, participating, getting involved, networking, sharing with other members, reading and learning, doing things, sharing their experience with others. I mean, really engaged. How many are really engaged? And even forming your own groups locally with other people that have similar interests? I would venture to say probably no more than 5 to 10% of the people we deal with are that committed and that engaged in the process of changing their life. Most people are looking for quick fixes. They're looking for someone else to do it for them. And when they realize they can't change their life on a dime, they quit and they go on to the next thing, only to repeat the cycle, and in the end, they never accomplish much of anything, and they stay in the same rut forever. Sound familiar? Personally, I continue to develop multiple streams of income. I have several, but I see what's going on in this world, and I'm not comfortable that those streams of income that I have now are going to be there forever. So I continue to develop multiple streams of income. I expand my avenues to achieving success. I continue to learn. I learn from other people whenever I can. And this is how I can live anywhere in the world that I like. This is what I want to share with you. I've lived in various places in the USA. I've lived in France, the French Riviera. I've lived in Costa Rica. I've lived in Panama. I've had residency in Chile. And now I'm considering some other beautiful places just to have a nice change. I've been in the same place for a while, and I'm considering making another move just to enjoy another part of the world a little bit more. I have mobility, flexibility. I can move on a moment's notice if things get ugly for any reason where I'm at. I talk about this in many of my presentations. Maybe you don't want to move as a matter of lifestyle. That's fine. It's not required. But what if you have to, but then you can't? And you can't because you haven't made the necessary preparations. I urge you to start getting out of your comfort zone. I challenge you to start doing the impossible, as I have done. Make God your partner, and there is nothing you can't do. Once you've done that, join the Lighthouse Law Club, and we'll do what we can to help you along the way. Now, do you see how important it is to get on your board, catch the wave of the digital age? Do you see the opportunities that are out there? Do you see the danger that's out there? What are you going to do about it? You want freedom? Join us. I hope to hear from you soon. God bless.